Did you hear that crowd?
The greatest temple
Rome ever built. The Colosseum. Because this is what they believe in. Power.
So this past week we had the premiere for the new trailer for Gladiator 2, which was Ridley Scott's sequel to his 2000 Academy Award-winning Best Picture, coming 24 years after the original movie. The Hollywood Reporter actually did a video talking about how this trailer, while it's doing well online, getting over 215 million plus views as of the time of recording this, is getting review bombed for a couple of different reasons. Some people have a problem with the fact that they're giving away too much in the trailer. Some people don't like the fact that Denzel Washington is in this movie. Some people don't like the fact that there's contemporary music by Kanye West and Jay-Z in here, even though the original trailers for Gladiator had Kid Rock music too, and that was back in 2000. But what they don't mention is some of the stuff that I'm going to mention here. First off, Ridley Scott hasn't made anything of quality since The Martian nearly 10 years ago. 2, the movie looks like a bad comedy version of A Knight's Tale, which was a comedy in and of itself and a much better movie, honestly. 3, nobody was asking for a sequel to Gladiator 24 years later. We're way past the point where it's okay to do a sequel to this and expect it to have any kind of relevancy whatsoever. 4, the movie cost over $250 million to make, and if you think you're going to make any money off of it, you're going to make that money back, you've got another thing coming, man. And more importantly, the biggest problem with the movie in general is that the movie just looks like shit. I mean, I'm taking a lot of criticism from people that I know, that when I said that the movie looked terrible, they really gave me this look like, why? Why does it look that terrible? And it's just like, listen, it's going back to what I want to talk about here today, and that is the fact that Ridley Scott hasn't made anything of noteworthiness in a long time. And yet people refuse to believe that the guy's best years have long since passed him by. And don't make this seem like that I'm bad-mouthing Ridley Scott by any means necessary. I have nothing bad to say about Ridley Scott as a person or as a legendary filmmaker, because he is a legendary filmmaker. This is a guy that was behind some of the most memorable movies of our generation. You know, the guy who gave us Alien, the guy who gave us Blade Runner, Black Rain, Thelma and Louise, great underrated works like Legend, you know, Someone to Watch Over Me, 1492, Conquest in Paradise, the best of the Christopher Columbus movies released that year. G.I. Jane, I think, is a criminally underrated movie. This is the guy that made stuff like Black Hawk Down, a great underrated gem in Matchstick Men, Kingdom of Heaven, American Gangster, Body of Lies. And then, shortly after that, when we got to the 2010s, it just felt like he was just going on autopilot and basically just looking back on his, filmography in the past. It's like, I could do something unique and different, but instead, I'm going to go back to the well that made me the director that I am, because we got really lackluster films that felt like he was trying so hard to go back to what made him a success the first time around. With Robin Hood, got to reunite with Russell Crowe again for a movie that's supposed to be the equivalent to Gladiator. Prometheus, remember how everyone was excited that Ridley Scott was coming back to that, and the movie felt like nothing but a self-congratulatory film when the film actually came out. The Counselor, which was a film that I had no idea what the hell he was trying to do there. Exodus, Gods and Kings, a really bad adaptation of the story of Moses and Ramesses. This, of course, been done better in The Prince of Egypt. The best film that he has done over this dry spell between 2010 and 2023 was The Martian, because it was a film that felt very different and unique compared to what he was delivering at that point. It felt like a film that was prime Ridley Scott again. And then he goes back goes back into the well again with Alien Covenant, which was somehow even worse than Prometheus was. All the Money in the World is a lackluster film, a very generic film. The Last Duel, I know people really love that movie, but I'm sorry, that movie is boring as hell. And I'm sorry, a Me Too movie in medieval times does not sound that promising whatsoever. House of Gucci is a film that admittedly I did enjoy, but at the same time I'm not ashamed to admit it's not a great movie. I just like it for the memes that it left behind. Jared Leto's performance in that movie is hilariously bad. And then Napoleon was a really, really bad movie that came out last year. So you can see why I'm not really that keen on and excited for Gladiator 2, because it just feels like Ridley Scott is literally running on autopilot right now, and it's like he's not that same director that gave us some of the most influential films of our time back in the day, and it just feels like he's repeating himself all over again. Like he's not even trying to be that great director that we know him to be. And I've been saying this for months now. Whenever they made the announcement about Gladiator 2, I was just kind of like, really? You're going back to this well again? Like, it's baffling to me. But when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about another director who's been around for a long time, who's quite the opposite of what Ridley Scott is doing right now, and that is, of course, George Miller. Now, George Miller has made some headlines this year alone because of, he's got a new movie out. He's got the prequel to Mad Max Fury Road, Furiosa: A Mad Max Saga, which was a pretty damn good movie, but unfortunately did not get the proper box office that it deserved. It was a huge flop in general, only bringing in back $172 million against the budget of $168 million. But that shouldn't take away from the fact that the movie was pretty good. But that one felt like with Mad Max, it felt like it was kind of a one-trick pony in general. The Fury Road was a great success, and I think them trying to create that zeitgeist again with this movie did hurt it in the long run. And not to say that the movie is bad or anything, I just think it was just not the right time to go ahead and release a sequel to this movie in general. But now, almost 10 years after the original film. But like I said, it shouldn't take away from how great the movie is. But Ridley Scott in general is a guy that I think is really... But no, I'm getting my words mixed up here. George Miller, I think, is the anti-Ridley Scott, because Ridley Scott right now is a director that really seems like he's on autopilot. He's just coasting on the films that made his legacy in the beginning and just going from there, knowing that people are going to support him no matter what. But George Miller, I think, is the complete opposite of that, because this is the guy who is, he is nearing 80 years old, and this guy is still putting out some really great quality movies out there that are all very different in varying genres. Like he's kind of like Danny Boyle in a way. Like he's been able to find these different genres in general and just do something unique and different with each one of them. And he's not stuck to one specific genre in general. Like Danny Boyle does comedy, he does drama, he does horror, he does action. He can do all those things. George Miller's a guy that's very similar to that because, of course, he made the Mad Max movies, which are very action-packed. He can also do horror in stuff like the Twilight Zone movie, which he directed the segment of Nightmare 20,000 Feet. He could do comedy like The Witches of Eastwick. He could do very dramatic stuff like Lorenzo's Oil. He can do family films like Babe and Babe Pig in the City, which Babe Pig in the City really is one of those great underrated gems of a movie where it's just like, where the hell did this come from? The original Babe was a good movie, but Babe Pig in the City somehow elevates it to another level, and it's just like, how did you manage to pull that off, man? And then following that up, he does Happy Feet, which is a computer animated movie about penguins that, like, at a time when everyone was doing the penguins thing with the Madagascar Surf's Up, March of the Penguins, and Happy Feet goes on to win the Oscar for Best Animated Feature, and it's not only just a film about cute dancing penguins, but also turns into an existential crisis movie at times. Like, it really is. It's amazing how far this guy, George Miller, has come as a director who's made all these movies that are just so different and so unique and do not feel like the same movie done over and over again like Ridley Scott does. Like, he can go through different genres and different ideas and create these incredibly amazing, unique, trippy films in general. Like his last film he did before this, which was a criminally underrated movie, called 3,000 Years of Longing, which had Idris Elba as this genie who's unleashed from this bottle by a professor played by Tilda Swinton, and he's telling her about her 1,000 years of experiences. And it was a great film, but unfortunately, kind of like with Furiosa, was a film that did not do well at the box office, which is a shame because it's one movie you should definitely check out. And it just goes to show the range of what George Miller can do as a filmmaker as a whole. Like, this is a guy that's, like I said, he's reaching 80 years old, and it just feels like this guy is still has a lot of pep in his step. Like, he knows that he has a lot more to give to people, even after all these years, being in this business for nearly 50 years. And this guy's still putting out these great, unique, different films in general. And like I said before, man, I think of George Miller as the anti-Ridley Scott. Like, anytime a new George Miller film gets announced, I get excited for it because I know that he's going to do something very different that's outside of his norm. And even if it's within the same area, he's not going to just repeat the same thing he did over again. Like, the biggest problem, like I said, with Prometheus, with Ridley Scott, was that it doesn't do anything different that the other Alien sequels haven't done already. Like, Prometheus was supposed to be a film that was supposed to be different from Alien in general, but it felt like when you actually saw the film, it starts off looking different, and then all of a sudden, I guess Fox came in and said, no, you gotta make this more like Alien, man. And just like, you have all these characters that get introduced, and you don't give a crap about any of them because you know they're all gonna die at some point, because that's the crux of the Alien storyline. You have a group of people, they're all gonna die, and you're gonna have that one person that survives, and none of them are as engaging as the characters from the original Alien. You know, none of them are as engaging as characters from, like, Alien vs. Predator, where, you know, that movie did not get the best, was seen as not a big hit when it came out. I really didn't like it at first, but the more I came to the realization that once everybody else dies, and you just have Sanan Lathan there with the Predator and all that, the movie gets really, really good. And it's just like, why can't the rest of the movie be just like that? But most of the Alien movies are just the same thing. You've got a group of people on a spaceship. They end up going to a place where an alien is. The alien gets on the ship, and then all of a sudden they're taken out one by one. In the original first two Alien movies, it worked. But as we get to 3, Resurrection, and of course with Prometheus and Alien Covenant, you just don't care anymore. And I'm hoping that Alien Romulus doesn't go down that same pathway again. I think it has a definitely unique, distinct style to it from Fede Alvarez, the director of Don't Breathe and Evil Dead, but it just goes to show you what a difference that between Ridley Scott and George Miller can be, because Ridley Scott is a director who, like I've said, is coasting on his previous successes. He's not really doing anything that unique or different anymore. He's just trying to be a director that can stay on autopilot, be very conservative with his films, and he knows that he's going to have an audience for it no matter what. But George Miller takes chances, and most of the time he usually does succeed. George Miller has a loyal fan base, but there are some great underrated George Miller gems out there that really deserve a lot more attention than they properly get. And I mean, it just goes to show you how great of a director George Miller still is. While Ridley Scott was a great director back in his day, but unfortunately he just hasn't had that same magic and spark that he had back in the day, and back in the day that he has now. But I mean, it's not too late for him to turn it around. Who knows? Maybe Gladiator 2 will be the one that puts it all together at the end. Maybe it will be worth it in the end. Maybe it'll be worth coming back to it after nearly 25 years. Who knows? I mean, I'm not saying it's probably not going to be, but that trailer did not look very promising from the get-go. The only thing that's got me really excited about that movie is Denzel Washington, because it does seem like he's having the time of his life with this. He could be what Joaquin Phoenix was to the original Gladiator. He could be the one thing that literally takes the film to another level. If that's the case, I'll accept it for that. If the movie ends up being a disappointment, it's just like, you know, this isn't really that much of a surprise to me, because this is exactly what we've seen with other movies of his. But yeah, I think of George Miller as the anti-Ridley Scott, the director who's well into his old days, but has not missed a beat whatsoever as a filmmaker goes. If Ridley Scott can somehow find a way to get back to where he once was, instead of just repeating the same stuff over again, I can radically change my entire viewpoint of his career at post 2008. But right now, it's definitely less. There's more misses than hits from Ridley Scott than there is for George Miller. I think George Miller really is the anti-Ridley Scott right now. So some quick thoughts on that. But if you want to see my thoughts on the Seinfeld series finale, which I watched again for the first time, and the fact that it has not gotten better after over 25 years, you can go ahead and check out that video as well. Check out the playlist below. See some of the other videos I've done. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.